1985. Guadalajara, Mexico. The air is thick with heat and tension. Sirens echo faintly through the night as a convoy of black SUVs barrels down a narrow, dimly lit street. Inside one of them, a man struggles, hands bound, face bloodied, eyes wide with terror beneath a torn blindfold. Enrique Kiki Camarena. DEA agent, husband, father. They drag him into a safe house, a place where screams vanish into concrete walls. The clock on the wall ticks mercilessly. Somewhere, a cassette recorder hisses to life. His voice, trembling, reveals names, routes, secrets that only someone deep inside the cartel's shadowy world would know. Then, silence. Days later, his body surfaces on the outskirts of town. Tortured, broken, unrecognizable. But this wasn't just another cartel killing. This was a declaration of war, and the United States was about to answer. The DEA launched Operation Leyenda, the largest manhunt in its history. Agents, soldiers, and spies would descend on Mexico in a relentless hunt for those responsible. Yet behind the chaos, one question lingered like smoke in the air. Who really ran Guadalajara, and how far did their power reach? Enter the Guadalajara Cartel. Not street thugs, not chaotic outlaws, but a network. Ex-farmers, crooked cops, and smugglers welded together by ambition and fear. At the center stood Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, a former policeman with the charm of a statesman, always in tailored suits, gliding through elite parties like he belonged there. He wasn't loud, he wasn't reckless. He was calculating, a man who spoke softly but built empires. Beside him, Rafael Caro Quintero, the wildfire. Young, brash, a marijuana king with a taste for race cars, luxury ranches, and beautiful women. If Gallardo was the brain, Caro Quintero was the spark that kept the empire blazing. And then Ernesto Don Neto Fonseca Carrillo, the old guard, experienced, connected, a smuggler who knew every dusty back road and corrupt official worth paying off. In the late 1970s, these men didn't just want money, they wanted control. Together, they transformed scattered traffickers into a machine, moving Colombian cocaine into the United States by the ton, laundering millions through banks while politicians and police chiefs toasted at their parties. But their power came at a cost. Whispers of disappearances, judges on payrolls, a system too scared or too bought to fight back. How did these men turn from small-time operators into the architects of Mexico's first true drug empire? The 1980s. America was hooked. Cocaine use exploded across cities and suburbs, a tidal wave of demand flooding in from Colombia's Medellin cartel. But to reach the US, they needed something the Colombians didn't have, a reliable route through Mexico. The answer came in the form of the Guadalajara Cartel. Under Félix Gallardo, Caro Quintero, and Don Neto, they transformed northern Mexico into a trafficking superhighway. Airstrips appeared overnight in the desert. Small towns became logistical hubs. Federal police waved through shipments as if nothing happened. Some said even Mexican intelligence, Dirección Federal de Seguridad, was on the payroll. At its peak, the Guadalajara Cartel controlled nearly every drug corridor into the United States. Cocaine, heroin, marijuana. If it crossed the border, odds were it came through them. But power draws attention, and in Guadalajara, one man began to pull at the threads. Enrique Kiki Camarena, a former Marine-turned-DEA agent, wasn't just observing, he was infiltrating, mapping the cartel's empire from the inside. His biggest find? Rancho Buffalo, a secret 1,000-hectare marijuana plantation churning out billions in product. In 1984, Mexican soldiers acting on Kiki's intel torched it to the ground. Smoke filled the sky. The cartel lost millions. For the first time, someone had struck a nerve. The bosses wanted answers. And revenge. Did they dare strike back at the US government itself? February 7th, 1985, Guadalajara, Mexico. It was just another afternoon in the city, or so it seemed. DEA agent Enrique Kiki Camarena left the US consulate, walking toward his car. He had no idea that cartel eyes had been on him for weeks. Then it happened. Two vehicles screeched to a halt. Armed men jumped out. In broad daylight on a busy street, Kiki was wrestled into a waiting car as bystanders froze. No disguises, no subtlety. This was a message. We own this city. The DEA panicked. American officials demanded answers. Mexican authorities offered only shrugs, excuses, and dead ends. Days turned into weeks. Kiki had vanished into thin air. Then, the tapes surfaced. Secret recordings revealed the unthinkable. Kiki wasn't killed quickly. He was tortured for over 30 hours inside a cartel safe house, injected with drugs to keep him awake, beaten relentlessly, interrogated about DEA operations, names of informants, and the extent of US knowledge. Even hardened investigators were horrified. The sheer cruelty went beyond a warning. It was psychological warfare. Finally, Kiki's body and that of pilot Alfredo Zavala, kidnapped the same day, were found dumped on a roadside, broken, unrecognizable. The message was clear. The cartel feared no one, not even the United States government. But the cartel had underestimated the storm it had unleashed. In Washington, fury erupted. Senators thundered on the Senate floor. DEA officials vowed justice. Within days, the agency launched Operation Leyenda, the largest homicide investigation in history. Hundreds of agents poured into Mexico, determined to bring down everyone responsible. But as they dug deeper, the truth that emerged was worse than anyone expected. Investigators were stunned at what they found because the rot went far deeper than anyone imagined. Operation Leyenda became more than a manhunt. It became an X-ray of Mexico's underworld, revealing corruption in places few dared to look. As DEA agents set up headquarters in Mexico City, they quickly realized the scale of the problem. Mexican police. Many were already on the cartel payroll. High-ranking politicians, their names kept surfacing in whispers and witness testimonies. Even intelligence officials appeared compromised. Yet the DEA pressed on. Teams worked around the clock, chasing leads from dusty ranches to luxury hotels where cartel bosses partied like kings under government protection. Then came the first break. In April 1985, Rafael Caro Quintero, the hot-headed marijuana baron, was caught in Costa Rica. He hadn't exactly been hiding. He arrived on a private jet, checked into a lavish estate, and traveled with a former Miss Mexico. It was arrogance that betrayed him. Weeks later, Don Neto was cornered in Puerto Vallarta, living comfortably in a seaside villa. He surrendered after a shootout that left bullet holes in the stucco walls of paradise. But the real prize, Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, remained elusive. The Godfather slipped through raids, shielded by layers of political protection. Rumors swirled he dined with governors, made deals with generals, and lived in mansions guarded by the very people sworn to catch him. And as investigators dug deeper, the story darkened. Tapes and testimonies hinted that parts of the US government, specifically the CIA, may have looked the other way, valuing cartel connections for Cold War operations in Central America. The question became impossible to ignore. Was this just a drug cartel, or something much bigger? By 1989, the man who once seemed untouchable finally fell. Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, the godfather of the Guadalajara Cartel, was arrested at his home in Guadalajara. No shootout, no dramatic chase, just a quiet surrender. A man who had ruled Mexico's drug empire now led away in handcuffs. But his arrest didn't bring peace. It brought chaos. Without Félix Gallardo's iron grip, his empire shattered into rival factions. From the wreckage emerged names that would dominate the drug wars for decades. The Sinaloa Cartel, the Tijuana Cartel, the Juarez Cartel. Each one claiming pieces of the old empire, each one more violent than the last. Rafael Caro Quintero received a 40-year sentence for Kiki Camarena's murder. only to be quietly released in 2013 on a legal technicality, sparking outrage in Washington. Don Neto grew old behind bars, eventually serving the remainder of his sentence under house arrest due to failing health. Operation Leyenda had exposed corruption at the highest levels in Mexico and forced the DEA to rethink how it fought cartels. Yet justice felt incomplete. The killers were punished, but the system that enabled them, it remained intact. And in the shadows, whispers persisted that elements of the US government, obsessed with fighting communism in Central America, had tolerated cartel operations in exchange for covert funding and intelligence. If true, it meant the line between lawman and outlaw was far thinner than anyone dared to admit. Operation Leyenda exposed corruption, arrested kingpins, and rewrote the DEA's playbook. Yet many ask, did it uncover the whole story? Or just the parts that were safe to tell? Because if whispers about secret deals and political protection were true, then the Guadalajara Cartel wasn't just a cartel. It was a symptom of something bigger. And as cartels grow richer, wars bloodier, and governments more entangled, one question refuses to die. Did the story really end? Or was this just the beginning?